Moana 2 is in theaters now, and given that this is the big Thanksgiving release, I know that many of you have been waiting for my review, and really, what can I say except you're welcome. This video is brought to you by Chubbies. Your holiday wardrobe awaits at chubbyshorts.com. Use code DAN20 for a special offer, and stay tuned after the video for more info. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my review of Moana 2, which is hitting theaters this Thanksgiving weekend to mix it up with Wicked and Gladiator 2. This latest Disney sequel finds Auli'i Cravalho and Dwayne Johnson returning as Moana and Maui. Still on her quest to find other people in the world, Moana discovers the existence of an island that could connect all the civilizations in the Pacific, but its secret is guarded by an angry god. Now Moana and her new crew of wayfinders have to set sail with Maui's help to find the island and unite everyone in order to ensure the future of Moana's people and culture. Now, Moana 2 is a surprise release because it wasn't even on the theatrical release schedule until earlier this year. It began its life as a streaming series for Disney Plus until Disney CEO Bob Iger decided to change stream mid-production and make this a movie instead of a streaming series. I'm sure not coincidentally, because Disney had a largely disastrous 2023 and could use what seems like a surefire box office hit. Although, given Disney's history, nothing is really a surefire box office hit anymore. Now, it's probably also not a coincidence that this move was made in the midst of the first Moana being a massively popular film on Disney Plus, and I think that the bean counters and the accountants over at Disney realized that sending anything Moana related to streaming would potentially leave a lot of money on the table, and that includes the live action remake of that first Moana movie, which is currently on the theatrical release calendar for 2026. My biggest question going into Moana 2 was if I'd be able to detect its origins as a streaming show, and the answer, for me at least, was undoubtedly yes. The first Moana was a beautiful looking film, and this movie is sometimes, but other times the animation feels like a downgrade, as if it was, well, made to be watched on a TV or an iPad. There are also sharp contrasts that can be drawn between individual sequences in the film. There were some spots where the backgrounds looked kind of plain, the character rendering looked very basic, there wasn't a lot of shadowing, etc. But then there were sequences like Maui's solo number, which was obviously meant to be sort of a follow-up to You're Welcome from the first film, that were intricate and had bright colors and all of these different moving pieces of the scenery. They were very intricately designed. It feels like to me that there were certain sequences of the film that were revamped and redesigned to make them more cinematic, and that there were other sequences of the film that were left largely as they were, and probably as they were designed for streaming, maybe not quite as complicated as you would normally see for the big screen. The biggest tell for me, though, was the movie's tone and structure, and you can really break it down by act. The first act, I thought, was really herky-jerky because you're trying to introduce so many people. You're reintroducing Moana and Maui. You're introducing Moana's new group of wayfinders. You're introducing this new mission that they have to go on. There are two villains in the movie that don't really go anywhere, and all of this is crammed into a runtime that's obviously probably much shorter and less episodic in its structure than was originally planned. Then you have the second act, and the second act to me felt like I was watching a streaming show and not necessarily a very good one. And it's kind of hard to describe, but there is a difference in tone between a show that you're watching on streaming and something that's designed to be watched on the big screen, and it involves the timing of the jokes. For example, in the second act of this movie, it's just joke, 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 and not in that kind of airplane way, but in the way that you see on a streaming show, especially one made for kids, that's designed to keep them hooked on and keep them from switching over to another show, where you have music underneath the entire sequence. You don't have any room for the jokes to breathe. It's just throwing as much as it can at you. The second act of this movie was really my least favorite. Now, I have no idea what was kept from the original series, what was repurposed for the movie, but if my hunch is correct, then I think that taking Moana 2 to a theatrical feature may not have delivered us a great Moana movie, but I think it also could have saved us from a pretty substandard Moana series. So Moana 2 has a crammed Act 1, a bad Act 2, but I think it has a decent Act 3. I imagine a lot of work went into it to make it more movie ready because it is the finale of the movie. But all it really did for me was just to underscore how much better this movie could have and I think would have been if it were developed as, well, a movie. Or maybe not even developed as a movie from the beginning, but given more time to be shaped into a theatrical feature. I think the main reason that Moana 2 was fast-tracked and put in theaters for this Thanksgiving as opposed to next summer is that Disney wanted to put more space between Moana 2 and the live-action remake of Moana, which comes out in about a year and a half. And I guess I can see their thinking, which is that they want to protect the franchise by separating these two movies a little bit. But I actually think, depending on what the audience reaction to this movie is, that you could have done more damage to the franchise by releasing a, what I think is subpar Moana movie instead of a much better put together one that would have had a shorter window between this one and the live action one. A big part of the film, of course, is also the music, and I think that the songs generally are fine. Songwriters Abigail Barlow and Emily Bear had the unenviable task of replacing Lin-Manuel Miranda for a streaming series and then top that off with the even brighter spotlight when the movie was pushed to theatrical. I don't think any of them are bad necessarily, but there weren't really any standouts for me. A lot of them just felt like generic Disney inspirational stuff. Some of them felt like an attempt to replicate Lin-Manuel Miranda's style from the first movie. And what I think you get at the end is something that kind of defines the movie itself. A lot of it isn't terrible, but it's very unremarkable. Ultimately, what Moana 2 is for me really is an oddity. It feels like a relic of the whole streaming war era where every studio put all of their eggs in the streaming basket and then desperately tried to go in and snatch some of those eggs back out of the basket when it became obvious that streaming was not going to be the silver bullet that they all assumed that it would be. So I think that Moana 2 kind of exists as maybe a best case, but certainly a not worst case effort under very chaotic circumstances. And it makes it somewhat difficult for me to rank on my personal scale because there were some parts of the movie that I thought were pretty good. Not a lot, but some. There were some parts of the movie that I really didn't like that would have flirted with that stay away rating. And then most of it was kind of in the middle. So when I'm putting together my overall personal ranking, I think I'm actually going to land on not a fan because the stuff that I didn't like in the movie wasn't really able to be redeemed by the stuff that I did like. That stuff just didn't hit hard enough. And honestly, when trying to decide between not a fan and it's fine, I didn't really give it a lot of grace because I don't think Disney really deserves a lot of grace for this film because I don't think that this was the best that they could do. I think that this was a move that was made out of desperation as a Hail Mary to try to redeem years worth of questionable corporate decision making. And ultimately, I think what they did was to deliver a compromised result and then ask people to pony up their hard-earned money to go see it as if it had been given their full effort. I think if you were going to do this, if you're going to change stream midway and put Moana 2 in theaters, then you needed to give it the time to actually retool it into a feature or to keep it on streaming and say, well, yeah, we might be leaving hundreds of millions of dollars of box office revenue on the table, but we're not going to deliver something that's not worthy of that first film. I don't think that Moana 2 is worthy of the first Moana film because it just doesn't have that same magic. It doesn't have that same spark. And I think when you add in the compromised circumstances, it just kind of becomes, I don't know, it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Of course, none of this may matter from a business side. Disney may win the day. We'll see what Moana 2 brings in over the Thanksgiving weekend. But what do you think? Have you seen Moana 2? Are you heading out to see it this weekend? Let me know in the comments below. And before we go, I want to thank the sponsor for this review. This video is brought to you by Chubbies. It's officially jacket season, and if you're looking for a great selection of winterproof jackets, vests, sweatshirts, flannels, and more, look no further than Chubbies. The holidays can be all about making a great impression, whether it's at a party, meeting your significant significant other's family for the first time, or hanging out with old friends you haven't seen for a while. Well, Chubbies has all kinds of great looking clothes that will also keep you warm, whether you're bundling up for a football game or a cozy night beside a bonfire. Even with the heat on, it can sometimes get a little chilly upstairs where I have my studio, and I'm actually wearing my Chubbies flannel shirt right now because, as you can see, it allows me to rock my signature look, but it also has the softness and the warmth of wearing fleece, so I can stay warm and comfortable at the same time. Plus, if you're getting ready to cheer on your favorite NFL team as we start pushing for the playoffs, Chubbies has just launched an NFL collection so you can show your support year-round. Check out the Chubbies website for their best deals of the year, and for a limited time, my friends at Chubbies are giving listeners and viewers of the show 20% off with the promo code DAN20 at checkout at chubbyshorts.com. That's 20% off your order with the promo code DAN20. Support the show and tell them that I sent you when you head over to chubbyshorts.com. This holiday season, gift yourself and your loved ones at Chubbies. Thanks to Chubbies for sponsoring this review, and thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned right here as we cover more entertainment news, reviews, box office, and more. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.